just going to give them a few seconds so they can get it live, because we're also live streaming this. Welcome, everybody. I know it's time out of your night, it's time out of your day, out of your life to come here and be a part of this process. We are incredibly grateful that you are doing this with us. I think some of our biggest challenges in the modern day is information and how information gets communicated successfully from point A to point B. So we've been very committed about communicating clearly with our residents pretty much since we started. And believe me, it's not easy. So this is why we do these kind of forums. We want your feedback, we want your participation, and we very much want you to see where we're headed with this and where we go, and let us know how we're doing. If we're doing something well, let us know. If you'd like to see it a little bit different, let us know as well. We tried to put as many surveys out there. We have these QR codes out and about. Please take those surveys. We have a lot of information to share with you. I'm just going to hand it over to Javier, and we're going to immediately start with what we have to show you for today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner. And again, I thank everyone that is out here tonight, and I'm sure we're going to be getting more people. Make sure that everybody has an agenda, and on the QR code, that'll take you to the new website that also has the questionnaire, has the previous information that's already been processed. So it's very, very important that just keep that QR code, and that's where all of the information is going to be shared moving forward. So I want to do an introduction of the team. Let's see, who do we got here? Go ahead, introduce yourselves, guys.
Okay.
Just pass it around.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andres Arcila with Natural Facial Landscape Architecture.
Rafael Portuondo, Perotti Architects.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Javier Fernandez, Land Use Counsel to the Allen Morris Companies.
Good evening, Omar Bayona, Superintendent for Parks and Recreation.
And we've got Jerry Marquez in the back from RPW, Resiliency and Public Works. He's taking pictures. And my name is Javier Gonzalez. I'm your community liaison for Coconut Grove for Commissioner Pardo's office. So that's the introduction of the team. We've addressed a little bit of the website. Again, if you click on that QR code, it'll take you to the website. The website's updated. And I think it's important, like I said, just make sure we share that. The more information we get out, the more people that are involved in the process. You actually, in the last probably like week and a half, we took over another 100 commentaries and questionnaires and a lot of comments. So it's actually very, very positive and very, very good. So that is the introduction for the website. And then I'm going to pass it on to Javier, who will do the overview of the project. And you're going to take some Q&A?
Yeah, I'll take some questions. So good evening, everyone. Again, Javier Fernandez. I have the honor of representing the Allen Morris Companies, who is the neighboring developer for the Ziggurat project. And in this capacity, with respect to Kirk Monroe Park, acting as a development manager for the city for the design and construction execution, hopefully, of the improvements to Kirk Monroe Park that all of us will finalize over the coming months. From a scheduling perspective, if you go to kirkmonroepark.com, which is the splash page we have set up for the project, you can find information about not only the last public meeting, including all the feedback, but you can ask your neighbors to provide feedback on the questionnaire that's currently live there. That remains open for feedback. You can also just input direct comments onto the website. Anything you'd like to add that's not captured in the survey is available to you as well on that format. There's also a real-time project updates that we'll be posting regularly, including the schedule of public meetings that will continue over the balance here of the spring and early summer. Currently on the website, you'll noted for upcoming public meetings are an advisory board meeting. As you all may be aware, the Commissioner has created a community advisory board meeting of certain stakeholders that in between these larger public convenings provide feedback on the site plan, design, basically serve as a sounding board to kind of make sure that we're getting the iteration of the programmatic elements and the park design in the best posture before it's brought back for general public feedback. They'll be meeting next on April 2nd. The locations to be determined. Our next two public convenings like this are scheduled for April 15th and May 15th. So if you want to add those to your calendar, they will take place here at City Hall, likely at the same time, which is 6 p.m. And then lastly, the goal is to try to get a design for the Commission to consider. That'll be full program and a design aesthetic somewhere on the June 25th agenda, if possible. We have tried to leave ourselves some time, so if we need additional public meetings, we can build those in. before the commission starts on its budget work, which will consume most of the fall. So that is the current schedule of progress. What's the role of the Allen Morris companies? I want to clarify that because there have been a couple questions. I'm not going to address any programmatic questions or aesthetic questions because those will be the subject of the conversations we'll be having over the next few months. But there were some comments that were made, and I just want to clarify them kind of pre-Q&A so we can stay focused on tonight's agenda, which is the program itself. So there was a couple questions or comments about what is the role, or asking generally what the role of the developer was with respect to this project. There's four things that we are providing. First, we're acting as a development manager. That has two components. Again, we're helping to manage kind of the design, evolution of the project here at the conceptual stage where we are right now. Once we kind of get conceptual approval, we'll take that through the design development and construction documents design phase. And then when we move towards construction, we will be executing through our general contractor the construction of the approved improvements. And then thirdly, serving as the guarantor for any cost project overruns. So to the extent that the final design is approved, a budget is agreed upon by the Allen Morris companies and the city, we will be guaranteeing any cost overruns beyond the $2 million contribution they'll be making to the improvements itself. So that's the four elements. We're a contributor. We're serving as a development manager that's helping to manage the construction, design and construction management of the improvements. And lastly, we're serving the role as the project guarantor. There was also some questions regarding, let me go back through the public feedback here. Bear with me 1 second as I get there. There are some questions in the survey about the fact that the survey was limited just to the physical aspects of the park. There were no questions about park programs or management or staffing and a request for alternate programming. The reason the survey is limited to the physical aspects of the park is that's the scope of work that we've undertaken. We are not going to be involved in the park's operations and management and the staffing. That is a function the city will retain post-improvements. There was a related question about that as well in terms of what our role was as a developer. We are not going to be privatizing the park. It will not be a park that will be accessible only if you're paying for access. It's not an extension of the building's amenities. That was another comment in the comments that were left on the splash page. Again, this will remain a public park maintained and operated by the city. And then lastly, I just wanted to add, there were lots of questions about construction scheduling and park access during the improvements, particularly as it impacts Coconut Grove Elementary, who is one of the main users of the park. From the get-go in our conversations with the PTA and with your commissioner, it's been abundantly clear the park cannot be entirely closed through the construction execution phase. And so once the programmatic elements are finalized, the conceptual plan is blessed by the commission and its design, and we move to that construction phase, we will work out a phasing plan for the actual execution of the improvements. And what we have heard thus far in our conversations with the PTA is they'd like us to complete all the improvements within one school calendar year, and to try to focus as much construction activity during the summer months so that the park, in as many components as possible, remains open to the school and the neighbors for partial use, if not complete use. So I just wanted to address those questions kind of in advance of the Q&A that we'll have later. If you have any further questions about our role, I'll be here on the side and happy to have a sidebar with anyone here in the audience. Thank you for your attendance and for your participation. Javier, back to you.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one quick thing. Some folks were asking us, why is it rolling out this way? And I want to be really clear. It is a big advantage to the city to have them be in charge of the construction. It happens much faster. It moves much quicker. Number two, they incur the risk of higher cost, not the city. So if there's a delay, if something happens, any inflation, tariffs, whatever happens in the world, we're not being held to that standard. So we actually view that as an advantage for our residents, and we're very glad that you all agreed to doing that.
And really quick, another thing too is there is an ad hoc committee that is previewing a lot of these meetings. We had a meeting last week. The meeting is represented by the Coconut Grove Village Council. That's Steve Capellini. The CGN, which is Center Grove Neighbors. That is Joseph Vergara. We have Carlos Santamaria, who's going to be doing more of the tennis He's one of the instructors there. And then Emily Warnick is the representative for the PTA. So we meet with them one-on-one prior, before these meetings to get any kind of feedback, anything that they're hearing, so that we can pass it on to the development team. So just so you know that there is multiple levels of participation. We're trying to be as open as possible with this, and I think that we will continue to do so, and little by little we'll get there. So just want to introduce the team again, and guys, take it away.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Just to recap really quick from our end, basically what we're going to first walk you through it's a recap of the initial meeting and the questionnaire that was shared with everyone. We've taken the results from those questionnaires, including some recent ones that have been filled out online, and we tallied up the results of that. The importance of that is that basically that is a tool for us as the design team to design on your behalf. So at this moment, what we're primarily focusing on are the programmatic elements for the park, what they are, and where we propose to locate those elements in the park. So we'll walk you through that, and then there's a couple of boards related to inspiration images that we'll share with you guys, just to make sure that in terms of the aesthetic, everyone feels that it's in line with the spirit of Coconut Grove. And then after that, we'll allow you guys to have some feedback on whatever we're going to present. And we are going to present two sort of layouts for the programmatic elements. We'll invite you guys to come up and look at them, and we have some stickers so that you guys could put a sticker on the option that you guys prefer. So with that said, let me pull up the presentation here. The questionnaire. Okay, so we'll start with this. And this is on the website. So yeah, so these are the same questions that you find on the website. And again, there's a website, there's a QR code. So if someone hasn't been privy to that, everything is there for everyone to reach. So these are the same questions that we initially shared in the first meeting. So we tallied those up based on the feedback that we got. You know, I'm not going to go one by one. I think we're going to focus on the main ones related to program at this moment. So if we go to this, I think these are some of the ones that we felt that were important. So, right, so if we start with the top right, is how important is it to increase the number of trees in the park, right? I think that was kind of in between. Then the next one is, would you like a covered pavilion in the park? The majority responded as yes. Would you like a children's playground in the park? The majority responded as yes. How important is it to improve the tennis courts? That was kind of in between, but in terms of the tennis component, we know that that's very important for what the park is and how the park was funded. So that is an element that we're keeping and that we're going to enhance. Related to that, I'm going to skip, but there's one that was added later about the hitting wall, right? So that's another element that we've heard a lot of feedback on making sure that we keep that and that we improve it. Then going back to this one here is how important is it to improve the unusable area underneath the banyan trees. So aside from the tennis courts, the park as a park itself, those banyan trees I think are like the most spectacular thing that you could find, and we happen to have them there in the park. So that's a feature that we feel is currently underutilized in the sense that it's not highlighted as a main feature for the park. So we want to, of course, preserve those trees, and we want to create a better space to be used underneath them. Then the next one is how important is it to have informal seating gathering areas. So I think people felt that was important. And then how important is it to improve the existing entry to the building, the bathrooms? People felt that that was pretty important. There was a couple of things that were put out there at the beginning that people actually were not too keen on, and those were, for example, incorporating golf cart parking on the perimeter. That was one of the items that people were not too thrilled about it. A water feature, people said no to that, and then there was a couple of other ones. So again, this is all on the website. You guys are welcome to review that at any time, and you could still continue to fill out the survey, and we'll continue to take that information into consideration as we move through the design process.
Yeah, and I think at this point, we can actually get started with the boards in order to show the different things. And one of the things that I feel is important is that we're looking at it as a big picture. We're not going to get into heights of walls, the color of the paint, and what the bathroom fixtures are like. So it's really like a large overview of where we are going to be locating the fields, the playgrounds, the children's playgrounds, the covered pavilions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So if you want to...
Sure. So what you see up on the screen and what you see on this board are the existing conditions of the park. Right, so I'm just going to quickly highlight the existing conditions. Tennis courts, tennis center building, there's storage here, the hitting wall, there's a small playground area here, fitness area, and then there's a sort of a covered dugout area. So those are the hard elements. From a landscape standpoint, what we have and we understand is, again, the large banyans. To the east and then to the west, there's a nice buffer of gumbo limbo trees, and then in between there are some olive trees. In terms of the existing trees, we are intending to keep all of the existing trees. Obviously the banyans, and primarily this buffer here to the west. There's a couple of trees that are in the center that we might need look into relocating to be able to accommodate the program. So one of the things off the bat that we understand about the way the park is currently laid out is that the hitting wall is in the center of the space. So by default, that kind of bisects the space. So that's one of the first elements that we looked at, and we know obviously we need to keep it. So that's one of the first things that we were trying to figure out where to position that. Right, so we have that. And once we reposition this, and we'll show you where we're thinking, it frees up the space, right, for us to be able to program this the right way. So with that, we could hit the next one here, right, is that. So basically what you see on the dashed lines are existing elements that are going to remain, but we're going to reposition them and relocate them on site. So here's one of the ideas for the hitting wall, whether it's oriented in the east-west direction or north-south, which we understand is the proper way to do it for tennis. That's what we're looking at. But high level, again, is moving this out of the way to be able to create space here in the center. And then in relationship to that, there is a fitness area. We are thinking of enhancing that and then also incorporate the playground on that side. The advantage of doing that is that now between that begins to activate the west end, and then we're going to activate this area underneath the banyan, and we know by default this is active all the time because it's the main entrance to the park. So then that frees this up. It's the same thing that's up on the... Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry.
Can you guys see on that side? Okay. So basically the dash elements are the elements that are existing in the park that we're thinking of relocating. So with that, we will share with you two layouts that we have. And these layouts began to represent the elements that we got most of the feedback on. So as you can see up there, and here basically we've numbered all the elements. So I'll walk you through them. So again, the idea of creating a new entry to the tennis center, keeping the tennis center. We understand that there's a need for storage, one for the tennis center, and there's going to be a need for more storage for the park. So as of now, we're thinking that actually incorporating a small building behind the existing one makes the most sense to consolidate the structures. And then, so that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's been some feedback about the way that the tennis center operates, right? So one of the things that we understand now, aside from knowing that it's a highly used space, is that also during the summertime, for example, there's summer camps. So we're thinking now beyond, like, how can we make this a better space for everyone to use, including during the summer, for summer camps and kids. So for that purpose and for the purpose of everyday use, the idea of having a tennis covered area. So basically it would be a waiting area that is covered, and then that would also allow a space to be used during the summer when there's a lot of sun and rain, and they're having a summer camp for the kids to be able to go to that space. In terms of the idea of a pavilion, we've tossed around different locations. I think at the end we landed with 2 locations. This is one of them, and right now it's more towards the center in relationship to this covered tennis area, and that then would work in relationship to the lawn space, right? So the lawn space is really the heart of the park, is your large space. So we want to program to the east, to the west, and to the north. The reason why we felt that it kind of makes sense to locate it in the center is because, one, it becomes a prominent feature, again, in the center of the park. And then also, it could be articulated in a way that it begins to create a buffer between the tennis courts and the park. Significance of that is if there's a small gathering or an event or a movie night, you want to be able to kind of have something that's a little more protected from the lights from the tennis court and the noise that may be happening. So that is the idea, the location.
One other point to that is, if one of the things that we also discussed with a lot of the parents was they're not located in a place where they could keep eyes on their kids. So this covered pavilion now looks into the park, the larger park, but it also looks into the children's play park. So from there, it's kind of like, you know, Grand Central Station. You're kind of looking at the park in a sort of broad brush way. The other thing too with the wall courts that are here is, this is, in talking to the tennis instructor and the whole thing, by putting it here, what it does is there's like a dugout in the middle, and the kids a lot of times during the summer camp will actually be sitting there in the shade. They can wait for their tennis match, but they can wait in the shade, but they can also use this as a sort of gathering space for the kids during the day, as a sort of confined area for them. So as Andres was saying, you know, we were looking at these areas as areas that takes care of multiple events in regards to the park and how the park is used.
Right. So continuing on that side, again, it's about trying to find a way to utilize the space as best as we can and create activation. So on the west side, what we've done is we've kind of queued that tennis shelter, the hitting wall, the fitness area, which is more or less the way that is currently on site, but then also the playground area. So as we get further into the design, depending on the feedback that we get, we think that one of the things that's successful about this is that somehow the hitting wall area could have even though it's enclosed, it could have a fence that then connects to this playground fitness area. So in the summer, it could be open. They're having a summer camp, then the kids could go directly into the playground. One of the things that you could see there around the fitness area and the playground is a dash line. So what that represents is our fences. So we're thinking that the kids' play area would have some sort of low fence that would blend into the landscape and vegetation, but just to make sure that we have a space that is secured for the kids to play and for parents to be able to sit there, relax a little bit, let the kids run around and not have to worry too much about them running off somewhere else. So we have that. I think then we go back to what we're calling for now the banyan walk, which is activating the space below the banyan trees. And then with that, we get into the discussion of entry points to the park. So the way that it currently works, there's only one entry point, which is through the tennis center. We've been doing some preliminary research, and we're going to confirm this with an ADA consultant and with fire, but being that, one, there's an existing building structure and there will be a pavilion, you're going to need two means of egress. So with that, we've been looking at a couple of ways to address a secondary point of entry. So on this scheme, you're going to see there's a point of entry that would be off of the corner, right, which then leads you again into these majestic banyan trees. And then we do have another point of entry all the way at the southwest corner, but that is for service. The idea is that would stay closed. It would have a gate, but that's currently more or less where the trash is located, and we think that would be the proper entry point. One, to continue to keep the trash over there, and to access that, and then also when the park needs to be serviced, they open this and they come in through there. So, any comments on this one?
Very good.
Okay, so moving on.
One of the things we're going to be sort of developing as we get through the different designs, there's been some questions in terms of what to do underneath the banyan trees, whether to leave it as landscaping, whether to do something where it's a little bit more hardscape, and that's something we're going to be developing in the future.
Okay, so moving on to option number 2, the second plan. The main elements, I think, for the most part, are in the same location, more or less, right? I think the differences here are really about the positioning of the cover pavilion, which is kind of off center and kind of tucked into that area. Also the orientation of the hitting wall. And then the second means of egress here, which we're showing it off of Florida Avenue on the towards the southeast. Other than that, I think the program, the main elements are located and positioned similarly to option 1.
And one of the things you'll see in both diagrams is that by relocating the hitting wall, we really opened up the park for the perception of the park to feel like a much larger park than it really is right now. Because right now, the way it exists, as Andres was saying earlier, it split the park in two. So now you have a large green area, and then we have the kids' play area and the exercise area. Even though they're repeated, there's slightly different nuances between each other. but at the end of the day, the programs are basically the same.
Yeah. And then I think on this scheme, probably we had it on the previous one too, but you see, for example, we're thinking the larger canopy trees that are in the center, we would relocate them. Some of them might be able to stay in between, but then I think it's the idea of putting them here in between the tennis court and the park side, and maybe some against Florida Avenue. So the other thing that I would mention in terms of the positioning of the pavilion, right? So we did look at putting it close to the banyan trees. I think that the challenge with that is that the trees are large, they have a significant root zone, and we don't want to get into disturbing that tree in any way, shape, or form. And then if we place it towards the south, it's a structure, and we feel that that begins to then really enclose the park too much. And what I mean by that is, to the west, there's no access. From the north, there's no access. We only really have the main access coming from the east. So this is a little more sort of accessible. So visually, at least to some degree, we want to keep this more open and inviting. I think for most of you who are familiar with the park, and we've talked to people who are just learning about the park, they drive by and sometimes they miss it. And they miss it because, one, there isn't anything that really catches your eye and draws you into looking into the space. But I think primarily is the large fence that is around the entire park, which by default, we understand the value of that to some significance, but by default, what that's doing is basically enclosing the park and giving its back to the neighborhood. I think what we want to do is open this up a little bit more. Obviously, keep it secure. We'll continue to have some sort of low wall with some sort of low fence on the perimeter, but do include a couple of more entry points. Invite the neighborhood and the public to access the park.
The other thing too is, in regards to both pavilions, is part of the meetings that we've had at the park was the liaison from the school next door. And one of the things that they were also saying was that they wanted to use the pavilion as a sort of educational part of something. So at that point, the kids could be actually sitting in the park. We could use the pavilion as a stage. We can have music. We can have a lot of events that are educational related. And having that larger green space was one way of achieving one of their goals with that. The other thing too is, which is, I don't know, maybe Andres might look at me like, not yet, but having to do with education, right? Having plants that become, butterfly gardens and all these other things. So when the kids come over, the professors and the teachers can actually talk about the park, not only as a park where you can play, but as a park that you can learn from. And that's one of the cool things about working with the school, that it's more than just, a local park. It's part of their education process. So.
No, I agree with that. I think the significance of that is long-term, being that we do have the local elementary school across the street. The more that the local community and kids get to use the space, not just to play, but also learn more, I think as they're growing up, they'll have a different sort of relationship to the park and pride and take some ownership of the space. So I think that's one of the components that as we get into designing the landscape and the planting, we'll definitely be looking at that aspect. So I think with that, we'll briefly, I think we had these at the previous meeting, right? But we brought them back, and these are really more about just high level, showing you the sort of idea of the character of the park. So the character, I think, is very much, we're trying to keep it within the spirit of what Coconut Grove is. So for us, there's certain elements in Coconut Grove that we feel are iconic and that have been a source of inspiration as we think about the park. So, for example, we have the kampong. So the kampong, I think the significance of that is really the articulation of some of the buildings which have a sort of more bohemian character to it, and we think we could take ideas from that to develop the structures and the character of these structures, also scale, the finish of some of the buildings using native stone, and then of course some areas that are work very well. It's in regards to the scale of the landscape, right? So I think right now the park has several large mature trees, which we intend to keep, but I think obviously from a landscape and garden standpoint, the space needs a lot of articulation and layering. So, for example, like I think there's moments where we would like to have sort of follies, entries, pavilions framed by landscape, and then, for example, large lawn area with other vegetation around it, large scale. And then I think some of the things that you see through Coconut Grove, the Kampong main highway, I think is the use of oolitic limestone. So I think that's definitely in part with the character. And Rafael, do you want to talk to this one?
Some of the things that we've brought up during the presentation, you see, shown in some of these images, and I think I'll make it even simpler in terms of the kampong, the sense of entry, right? In regards to some of the areas in the kampong, you'll see that there's a larger pastoral area nestled in within the landscape. You'll see that there's one of the gifts that we have in the park is the banyan tree, and it's a mature banyan tree. And one of the things that came up in our last meetings was, are we going to light it up? Are we going to trim it? Are we going to make it look like a specimen banyan tree? And the answer is yes to all of that. And then you start getting the growth on the banyans. And one of the things that is constantly coming up is that this park is a park with the character and the feel of Coconut Grove. And that's the key thrust behind all our thought process. Because it's not a park in the Gables, it's not a park in Palm Beach. It's a more softer, more picturesque sort of park. And I think that Andres brings up great images of the kampong, the use of oolite stone, the gardens, the layering of the gardens. And one of the things that we're excited about, which we haven't started yet, is we're thinking that some of the garden follies that the children can play on would be made out of the coral stone, something they can climb, something they can play on. And when they're not being used as elements in the park, there could be like architectural elements that look pretty when they're not being used. And you see that in parks all around the world. And so,
if we make them, do we have the little stickers so that folks can participate for the next step?
We do. So I think the next step here is, should we do some Q&A before everyone gets up?
Do you want to do Q&A first?
Yeah, because then it'll be hard to get you guys back on your seat. So we could take some time to do some Q&A, and then we'll invite you to put a sticker on one of your preferred option.
And if you feel like you need to leave or something like that, you can just put the sticker.
So that's good.
and we're going to be up here to answer any questions on which.
You guys can call us.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Hello, thank you very much. My name is Christopher. I live on Gifford, which is right, next to Matilda. Quick, I think, easy question. The park currently has kind of a challenging sloping. I don't know if that's a relief or what the altitude difference. Is that going to be addressed in the new park?
Yes.
Yes. So one of the things as a park, is the actual slope. Because one of the things we're thinking of doing is, as it slopes down, we can actually build in built-in benches out of stone so that the parents can sit and watch their kids play. And it'll be more picturesque that way. So we're looking at that as a positive thing as opposed to a negative thing.
Right. And then, of course, making sure that we address it from a grading standpoint. because it slopes in towards the west, so also drainage. We're taking that into consideration. But I think it's right now, I don't think it works to the benefit of the park, but I think long-term, with some of these ideas, that's actually a feature that we could really take advantage of, because it allows us to do more interesting things with the topography.
If I may, if you guys can use these mics, that way I can pass these around. Davey?
Hi. Davey Frankel. I'm also a member of the Coconut Grove Village Council with Steve and a resident. One of the things that I'm wondering about is there's two elements to the money and the financing of the project, and one is the drawdown. How does that take place between the two tranches? Is it just like 50-50 as it goes along, or is the money taken out of the city first and then the development money, or the development money first?
Sure, happy to. It's equally. So it's $2 million from us that's budgeted right now, and $3 million from the city, so it's $5 million. So we'd be providing 40% of each of the draws.
So you're just paying out 40% of every dollar spent.
Correct. That's correct.
It's an even split.
Yep.
So if the unlikely thing happens that it becomes under budget, then the savings are equally split in that way between the developer and the...
Again, if there's a cost overrun, if we bust the budget, we pick up 100% of the bust.
I'm appreciating that. Thanks.
Hi, thank you all. Emily Warnick with the Coconut Grove Elementary PTA, and it's been really nice being able to work with you all on this plan. One thing that you mentioned that I'm a little concerned about, because the PTA is really about safety and keeping the kids kind of enclosed, the low wall or the low gate, it's kind of important to us from the PTA standpoint that it's not just a low gate, that there's more protection and, with the kids in that playground.
Agreed. So to clarify, when we say low wall, we're thinking that it would be a low stone wall of like 2 feet, and then an iron gate like of another 2 feet on top. So you have a total of about 4 feet. What we want to do is not create something that's too tall where it's not inviting, and then also still keep some transparency into the park. But
and then last question.
So
Sorry,
total
one
it
more.
would be 6 feet.
6 feet, okay. One more question about where, on that thing, the tennis center, where would, like Norbert or the people that work at the tennis center, where are they located on that plan? Because from another safety perspective, he is constantly keeping in same place. So if there's a second entrance, though, how is that going to work with him keeping eyes on people entering from that second entrance?
with the second entry. So I think that's something that we need to further explore, but there's the possibility of having like a self-latching gate just for the kids' safety, so that if someone could walk in, but when they walk in, it's going to close by itself.
Okay, because it is important that he keeps eyes on everybody.
Right.
Just so you know, through most of our parks, we do have self-locking gates where they open and then the kids can't get to it because it's a higher position.
Hi, Patty Highfield. I live on Oak Avenue, about just a stone throw from the park. This all sounds beautiful. Thank you for having this. I do want to ask about plans of how you're going to manage traffic during construction. Traffic obviously has gotten really backed up on Oak Avenue, Matilda. So what happens when all this starts?
More to come, honestly. I don't think we've gotten, frankly, that far along in the thinking. We don't have we've got to get the design and the elements right, and then we'll have a maintenance of traffic plan that'll be developed pre the commencement of construction. And that'll be vetted just like this will.
And that's also something that we are very, very considerate about. So yeah, we understand, the challenges that we're going to have there. And there's even more coming, trust me. Because we're working on traffic calming on Oak. Yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of things that will be coming, but that will be more traffic oriented. And you can reach out to our office and we can update for you.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Hank Sanchez Resnick. I live on Gifford Lane, half a block from the park. So two things. Maybe what Javi just said addresses it. The whole issue of mobility, traffic, and circulation, I think, is really important. You're doing really great stuff here, and I think we're going to have a much nicer park. I think it's going to be greatly improved. I'm very concerned about access to the park. Who gets to it? Where do they come from? What means of transportation are they coming in? Especially if they're walking. How do they get there if they're walking? Maybe this seems really stupid, but I don't understand why there can't possibly be a northern entrance from Oak. Maybe it is stupid. Maybe that could not possibly happen. But I live on Gifford, which is almost a pedestrian street. People are walking on Gifford all the time. There really should be a crosswalk at Gifford and Oak to the park. If there were a direct crosswalk into the park right there, I think that you'd see an awful lot of people entering the park from the north. Unless this changes, they'll have to go around to the east or the south or the southeast. So just something to think about. I wish you could at least consider that. So I think that's the main thing. I've got some neighbors here who. Okay, Joseph.
Okay. Thanks, Hank. I'm Joseph Vergara. I am at the board for the CGN Neighbors, and I'm also the representative for the stakeholders group for the park. Mostly, I think my name was mentioned before. Sorry for that. My question is a two-part question. First, was there any feedback about and what was it about the need for, or the want from the community for additional entry points to the park? Do we have that stat from the questions from the poll?
Right. So again, I think the initial feedback has been to try to keep just one.
Okay.
But what we're trying to clarify here is that by default, and because of code requirements, we're going to need two, because you got to have two means of egress when you have a building within the park, and the park has a fence around it. And then also because there will be a pavilion, which in some occasions, I'm sure that this park will now serve another purpose for the community in terms of events. So let's say during the holidays, if there's an event, you need a second means of egress. So that's where the second entry point is really coming from and what's driving it. So what we're doing here is just because of that need, we're proposing two potential locations.
Okay, so my follow-up question to that is because I know that the PTA, they put a lot of stock on the ability to just walk in the park and know that as long as you're looking at one checkpoint, so to speak, kids are free to roam within the park, knowing that there's a closed perimeter. So there's a lot of value for some people just keeping the one entrance. And I just want to understand, and perhaps the answer to the question you don't have at the top of your head. If you do, I will call you a nerd on codes. But I would like to understand what the code specific code requirements is for those means of egress that you mentioned, and the ADA entrances per structure that you mentioned, because it's my understanding as a civil engineer that ADA requires accessibility to features within the park. So every feature has to be accessible, which they now are, to the extent that there's an entry point that is ADA friendly through the ramp and down. So whatever gets created could flow from that. And the means of egress is also a point that's hot when it comes to fire. So running away from fire, you have to be able to, and that also it's from an enclosed structure. And so my points are, if there's a way where the code research, first of all, understanding what those code provisions that are you're basing the whole two entrances are needed, and second, if there is a way to adopt the signs so that we keep the single checkpoint that we now have. Those are my questions. I will understand if the answers are not top of
Okay, yeah.
Andres, we can address that because, again, the park has to be ADA compliant. It currently isn't. So every access has to have a pathway to it. and make it ADA compliant. We'll get to the code requirement. So we'll work on that on our side because, again, at the end of the day, this is a public park run by the Parks Department and has to be ADA compliant by the Parks Department. So at the end of it, we'll get to that.
Correct, but just to quickly clarify, those are two different things. Egress and ADA. By default, we know it needs to be ADA. The egress is about safety and points of entry and exit. So as of now, based on the research that we've done, because there is an existing structure, the park has a fence around it, you should have a second means of egress currently, which it doesn't.
Well, we do. There's a gate right next to the building, so there's a way of getting two actual ways to get out of the park almost at all times. It's just that gate is usually open for special circumstances, which could be turned into an emergency gate. Right now, if that gate were to become an emergency gate, like any other building, where in case of fire, please don't open, but in case of fire you can, then problem solved with that. But we still will have the condition of single checkpoint for peace of mind for the parents.
So we'll have an ADA consultant, number one. We'll have a life safety consultant, and then we'll verify all this with the fire marshal. I think what we're trying to get from you guys at this point is, in the event that we did have to have one by code, where would you prefer it? And then we could get into the specifics, if we do have to have it, as to how we could make it as safe as possible for the kids.
Just to go, I'll hand it to you. That's all right. Just to follow up on those entrances, please keep in mind that the one entrance that we have now, understand that it's only one, but it has a person there all the time. It has a gate. It's locked. That person has a phone. And this park is, yes, a city park, but it's kind of more than that. Every park is probably unique. This one is unique in the sense that it has tens of kids in there every single day who both need to be corralled and protected, and has someone who has access to quick response emergency services in there. The more gates that are unmanned, that maybe have a crash bar or whatever else like that are on there, you're taking away from the current service of the park it is now. And so just please consider keeping the relatively high security and the manned security that's in there now, because it's an important part of what the park is right now.
Absolutely, we will. And to that point, that's why we're also, for the playground area, we're thinking of also putting a low fence around that area. Right, so when the kids are in there, then it gives you that secondary means of security for them.
Thank you. My name is Letty, and I live here in Coconut Grove, in South Bayshore Lane. But I'm also a member of the West Village there, and I would like to represent the people and the kids there in West Grove, and I look at the design, eyeballing it, it looks small, and when you mention about only 5 courts, and if you add additional like 19 units of condo or the density, more population, and it's only 5 units there, and then we have in Coconut Grove, we have international population. So when they want to play tennis, the first thing that comes to mind will be this place, because it will be. Is it going to be a tennis park?
Yes, it remains as the tennis center.
If it is a tennis park, and this, and the density of people is going to use this for tennis, it looks like only 5 parks will not serve the purpose of the people in Coconut Grove, West and East Coconut Grove. My question is, with the playground, instead of a playground there is a playground few steps at the back of the school, elementary school. Can the kids use that as a playground? And instead of the playground in that space there, we can put another tennis court, because tennis is for kids like from 6 or 4 years old up to adult. It's a generational sport. So that looks small to serve the people in Coconut Grove, east and west.
So just to clarify, are you suggesting that we should add more tennis courts? Okay. Yeah, got it. Right. So yes, the park was initially funded as Kirk Monroe Park because of the history of the tennis court. That he was the first person who had a tennis court in his house in Miami, and therefore they basically commemorated that in this park. So currently there are, as you can see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 courts, and there is the hitting wall. I think you have a valid point, and on some of the surveys, we did have some people ask for additional tennis courts. But again, we're trying to, we're here on behalf of everybody, the general public, right? And that's why we do these surveys, and we're trying to balance that out. But the majority did not want an additional tennis courts, right? Like as you can see, there are people here who have kids and are more concerned about continuing to be able to utilize the park for their kids, and I think that looks like it's a majority.
Yeah, it is. We didn't get any kind of request for extra courts, but we are getting some courts over on Grand Avenue on Plaza. So you will be getting a couple of tennis courts in Little Bahamas you'll get tennis, pedal, and also some pickleball courts on the vacant lot that is on Plaza and Hibiscus off of Grand. So you'll be getting that.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll be put.
I also agree with Andres in that there's less and less parks around, and there's less and less areas for our kids to play. And I think that this is an opportunity because it is a park that does service the school and does service the kids in the neighborhood, that adding more hardscape and greenscape is probably not the best use of the land in this particular case.
Just a quick question. I'm maybe getting ahead. It may be covered in the next steps, but are there going to be additional surveys with new questions, such as what type of equipment should be on the playground, the design of the pavilion, things like that? Is there going to be more structured feedback solicited from the community in an online questionnaire? And if we had filled out a questionnaire at the previous meeting, should we be filling out the online one again? That's really it.
Yeah, so I think what I would recommend is we're not going to get into those specifics, but on the website, you could make those comments and suggestions, right? But like, there's a general comment section, and we look at that, and we'll definitely take those things into consideration. I think that the next step from here is gain your feedback on these options, and then we come back with a design, like fine-tuned design in terms of how these elements will connect and more or less the character and shape of that. I don't think at that point we would have specifics in terms of what equipment, but we welcome those recommendations. Thank you.
Hi, Anais Niembro. I live here in the Grove in Crystal Court. It's not a question, it's more of a comment. Going back to accessibility in the park, usually there's no parks for kids with special needs and disabilities. So just something to have in mind, that the equipment that you picked when designing the park, it's not just the swing where you can put the kids, but just something that it could have a ramp or just something that could feel more integrated. That's
Great idea.
Agree. Yes. I think as of now, right, in terms of design, we want to give you guys the best thing possible. So we're not thinking of something standard of just putting some swings and call that a playground. I think we want to create something special that everyone's going to love and feel good to be there, and of course for the kids to be able. Okay. So thank you.
Part of that is also the change of level, or the if it was a handicapped child, maybe on a wheelchair, they could actually just, ride around the park and really enjoy the park as well as part of the entertainment of that.
Hello, good evening. My name is Sanna Martins. Thanks for having us and thanks for the really nice presentation. Coconut Grove resident for 16 years, also mother of 3 boys. One is here. They all have attended or are attending Coconut Grove Elementary. Quick question, transportation. So the vote was against the golf cart parking on the side. What about bicycles? Is there a plan to have like bicycle racks? We cycle a lot. Coconut Grove is an excellent place to cycle. Well, it could be improved. But that aside, I'm constantly struggling with parking for bicycles as well. So
We could definitely accommodate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Does he have a question? I think he was raising his hand earlier. No, I heard.
Hi, Elisa Margulies. I live in Center Grove, and I think your concepts are beautiful, and I love your...
It is simply becoming very much, I think we've discussed this like a public works project, right? Because so the reality of it is to keep it closed, you have to elevate it. So really right now, all we're doing is looking at the elevations, designs. Do you have anything that we can add to from Fuller? Just from a public works?
Good afternoon, Jerry Marquez, RPW. Just to let you know that we will be involved in the process, reviewing the plans when they submit the deliverables. There'll be 30, 60, 90, 100% that we'll be looking at that, and then we'll be able to share that with the community as that happens. Okay? Resiliency and Public Works.
Anybody else before we give this to Davey? No? Hold on, I got one more.
Good evening. My name is Maddie Quirk-Shattuck. I'm a resident next block over on Oak and Virginia. I also teach in the Grove. My morning commute is on the sidewalk right in front of the park. I usually travel via bike or on foot. I was just wondering, I don't know where the borderline is and what's city property and whatnot, but in the renovation of the border of the park, if an extension, a widening of the sidewalk would be possible, especially during drop-off and pickup times. There's so many people there. It's great to see everyone on the sidewalk, but to have sufficient room for everyone to pass going in both directions, especially if there's going to be hopefully more events happening at the park, more foot traffic for those who are entering the park that way.
Great point. Thank you.
Just a question about after the capital improvements. I'm excited and all the stuff you presented, and the improvements are exciting. Is there going to be increased maintenance, staffing? Like, how does that fall once the project's over to the Parks Department? Has that been looked at in terms beyond capital costs, running costs, maintaining all the new improvements?
Currently, we have a crew that goes by weekly. However, we do have the on-site staff, so if obviously there's an increase in activities in the park, we do increase the staffing to make sure that everything's cleaned.
Davey.
Yeah, I think the plans look great, and I do appreciate the process that we're going through. I think it's very cool. I hope that there's something. I know that everything for Fuller Street has been scaled down a lot, but I think it would be great to continue this as also a process with the community, because I think that's a very public space, right? That's something that people transit and use, and so it'd be nice to keep this community vibe going. And I'm also not sure how the general pot, as I understand it, is for both projects, right? So how that's going to be dealt with in terms of money going towards one or the other project, and how that kind of a decision will be made.
So, I think yes, the pot is for both projects. That's how the agreement's structured. There's been some very clear feedback that people want the condition of Fuller Street to stay relatively the same. I think other than the improvements that Javier mentioned, which are meant to kind of, deal with the grading and make it more of a consistent pedestrian street, and some landscaping. I don't think we're talking about a substantial reimagining of Fuller Street like was initially contemplated. So the resources, I think, increasing will be, again, this is a decision for the City Commission ultimately. But the resources right now, the focus is the park.
Fuller Street has the bid involved as well, right?
The Fuller Street does have the bid involved as well.
But I think the more that we've looked at Fuller Street, it's just becoming a simple RPW project. Elevate the street to make it ADA compliant, basically put in whatever infrastructure is needed below it. You may plant a few trees. Programming is still, some lighting program is still running by the restaurants. All of the tables stay the same. That's not our purview. That is the restaurants and everybody that's there, the end users. So that's it, and that's with the bid. There may be some code that we need to modify, but at the end of the day, Fuller Street is not that complicated. It's basically you got to bring it up. You got infrastructure, you've got lighting, you've got basic stuff, and drainage. But what is the infrastructure that you need to make the street safe?
Yeah, but the permits that the restaurants take
that's a different animal.
But they're with the
that's
cafe
a bid.
permits
That's a
are
bid.
with the.
That's a bid.
It's directly to the bid.
Yeah.
The permits are
Yeah.
given by the bid.
Bid and City of Miami, not the City of Miami.
City of Miami.
Mark, Mark's out there. I'll try to get Mark in here to get.
No, I just from my feedback from neighbors and constituents is very much that they want to try and keep some sort of public element to it, and to have there be a way for people to use the street other than.
Lee, you want to answer that? You want to take it? Here, let's get one of the public. Let's get one of the public. You mind?
The permit's issued by the city.
Right.
It's you're leasing it or you're getting your permit and you're paying for it by square foot. As for the center, I think it is well used by the community. It could,
No, and you've been super cool and super generous, and people are super psyched. Barracuda's awesome, and you guys let
Appreciate
people
it.
sit there, and it's awesome. And I think the concern that I hear from people is just that once it gets formalized, is there a way to keep a public seating element and a use of the street as a public element that is not relying on the generosity of the retail businesses on the street as well? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's figuring out some sort of public seating at one end or the other of the street where there aren't establishments. There's the parking lot, so there's not really like a place for picnic benches and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just think that we could utilize it in that way as well.
We'll get.
And I'm totally for everyone having tables and utilizing it as a cafe style. I just think also once you raise the street, you don't need the sidewalks anymore, right? You can move the tables up against the walls, and you could have kind of a nice public thoroughfare down the center and still keep the amount of seating that you guys have there. And that would just be something I would love to be taken in
Fantastic.
consideration.
Yeah, those are great comments. Again, I think just high level, it's table topping, meaning that everything's going to be flush. That may have a sort of impact on some of the trees. If it does, then we'll bring new large trees with the right infrastructure below, like silver cells, so that they grow the right way. Long term, they're not creating uplift. And then the main thing to keep in mind about that space is that even though it's going to be closed off, we still need to maintain a 15-foot lane for fire. So that kind of drives that whatever it's done, which is going to be minimal.
And I think the design does have some public spaces involved. We just can't encroach, obviously, on the restaurant's space, but that's all I'll consider. And I apologize if I sound that it's just an RPW project, because at the end of the day, that's what it's going to be with 2 or 3 public elements. But the hard part here is lifting the street and doing that. So, and again, I think next time, since we're going to have some design elements, we'll bring some design elements.
I think we have one more question, and then after that, we could take 20 minutes, 30 minutes for you guys to come up and put a sticker on one of the boards.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mia. I'm a West Grove resident, and then I just have really quick commentary that will end in a question. I guess my main concern is I hear, and I really do appreciate what you've already expressed about prioritizing certain elements like keeping the banyan trees, making sure that they stay safe throughout development, as well as incorporating sort of native landscape, native rocks into the park. Miami has a really big tendency to put aesthetic significantly above practicality. So when I see a lot of these, I know that these aren't your personal renderings, you know, it's more of an inspiration board to draw from, but like immediate concerns are mosquitoes, flooding, drainage, heat protection, right? And so I know that a lot of your ideas, I have no doubt that you are covering those bases, but my question would be more so like, is there a guarantee? Do you have an ecologist on your team? Do you have someone who works specifically in green infrastructure who is going to prioritize native plants or like make a park that's practical and not just pretty?
Yes, so we're actually working on a new resiliency plan for Miami Beach Botanical Garden, which has to do with all those things, and we've been dealing with specialized consultants, so we're learning a lot, and we'll get it done.
Okay. Quick question. So say if there are 2 entrances needed by code, if that happens, there had been some talk earlier on when we were meeting with Alan Morris that they would consider having ongoing, at their expense, maintenance oversight, maybe security or something in the park. Is that still potentially a possibility that could help, quell the fears?
To be very direct about it, we had initially in our development agreement proposed the outlines of a long-term maintenance structure, which would involve us also either offering services or contributing to a shared community structure. Quite frankly, the reaction was people felt that we were trying to privatize the park. That was not the intent. The goal was really to set up a structure to ensure that the investment would be properly maintained and preserved. So as a company, I know Spencer's here, he'll reiterate this, we're very interested in setting up a framework, because the last thing we want to do is go through all this effort and time and this investment and have it over time dissipate because the city has a bunch of other financial needs and it's not maintained at the proper level. So we're open to that conversation and look forward to being part of that solution.
Hey, be nice to the city. Davey, you're killing me.
Not reconstructing, maybe enhancing the exterior and adding to a side additional storage. But, correct, yeah.
We don't do security, right? The park doesn't do security cameras. No, that's something. Hold on. Sorry about that.
It doesn't have, but we can add CCTV and wireless.
Okay. All right. No. We can add CCTV if needed. So we can.
Yeah, just for those that didn't hear, he was suggesting cameras as a means of security.
So that's something we would have a discussion in the future because that's a mixed bag, as we like to say. If there's no more quick questions, what we'd like to do is get everybody up here, interact with the board. And if you have any direct questions for staff, we're here. So we're just ask away, get some stickers, sticker away.